Hi, beautiful artist. Today, because I'm getting so many questions, I wanted to share with you this MeiLang, the tubes. They're fantastic. I love them. I'm can't believe actually that they're not a professional watercolor because I just love these so much. And I've been a Winsor Newton user for decades, since college, because that's what was required for my college classes. But for my painting every day, I had to find an alternative, and I like giving those of you that are newer to watercolors an alternative. So you see in my tutorials, I share these MeiLang palettes, which are the pans. I enjoy using the pans because they're already ready to go. I think it's really a personal preference if you like the pans. For me, it's more of an ease of workflow. It just seems quicker for me. And then I use the tubes to refill these. The colors are the same. You get 36 in this MeiLang palette. This is actually the larger palette. This is the 48 palette with the metallics, but they do have their 36, which has the tubes that are in here. So you can purchase this smaller set. I'll find my link and link that for you. This one that I just happen to have out right now is the pans with the 48, and they have the metallics. So I think it's really just more preference what you like. For me, again, I like the pans. It's just that ease of workflow, and it seems quicker. My colors are already in there, ready to go. I just reactivate them with a little bit of water. But there are a lot of cons with painting directly from a tube, which a lot of people like. Some people feel like you get a little bit fresher color, more exact color of the pigments because, of course, in a palette, you might get some mix. A lot of times will mix, like right now, my yellow green or my tree green has a little bit of dark green in it. So there's something to be said for that. I don't mind that. But if you are going directly from a tube, you are going to get probably the purest color. So again, that's a preference. And then also, I'm going to do a painting, by the way, for you today, and I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit. I feel like when I use directly from the tube, I tend to get too much paint on my brush. So for me, that's another kind of con. I would rather use these to fill up my pans and go from my pan. Tubes can be, I'm trying to share with you some of the things, some of the pros of using tubes. They can, I think, be a lot more pigmented or saturated in color. If you have old tubes, just a fun fact here, if I pick up some of my older tubes I've had for years, that first little gush of product that comes out can sometimes be that Arabic gum. It's kind of like a clear gel almost. And, you know, you can just put a little bit of that and then put a little bit of the pigment that's deeper in an older tube and just mix them together. I love, one of the things I love about the MeiLang paints is they do have just this beautiful, because of that Arabic gum, glossiness and color intensity, which, to be very honest, I think it's almost too good to be true as far as that color vibrancy. I love it. I've also found, though, that the transparency is really great with these MeiLangs. It's got that really kind of rich, creamy, buttery pigment, but yet the transparency is great. And for me, again, this is just a personal preference. I'm not real big into that chalkiness. I think it looks a little bit duller. I know some people like it because it creates some texture in your paints, but I don't like the chalkiness. And with the MeiLang palette and the tubes, I find there's not a lot of granulation, just my preferred look. Let me see what else before we start to paint. With tubes too, what I found is some people like to create their own palette. And with the tubes, you know, if you have a pre-created palette that you purchase, you're gonna have colors that you don't use so often. So for me, I pretty much use all my colors. But if you do have a palette, kind of a smaller palette that you typically use, you can create your own palette. And I've had, let me show you if I can find them here. I've had these for a long time. I don't really use them because I go for the quick palette, but I have purchased these, and gosh, I'd have to go back in my history to find links for these. But let me just show you, if you do like creating your own custom palette, you can buy these empty little palettes. They're really great. And as you can see, I've never used this. I've had this for several years. But then you buy the little pans and you can fill them with your colors you might predominantly use and put those in here. And that would be your custom palette. So those are kind of fun. I just haven't done that. I don't know why. I've had these forever. I don't think this one's filled either. But it's an option for you if you like using a limited palette. And then you just buy these, you fill them up, you put them in there, and you have your own custom personalized palette. I think it's a really cool idea. I don't know why I've not done that. But that is an option for you. For me, I use these to fill up my palette, my MeiLang palette that I have now. So I think in some ways this might be a little bit more cost effective because, again, some pans you may not use. I use them all. Just again, personal preference, I think, and I tend to like the pre-made pans. I pretty much use all of them. All right, so let's just use, let's see, I'm gonna paint these. By the way, thank you to a subscriber. I'm so sorry. I didn't write down her name on my live the other day. She introduced me to a new flower. I love it when you guys do this. And I had to look up how to say this, a hellebore. I didn't look up what area of the world it's kind of native to, but they're really kind of cool little flowers. They're a 5-petal flower. Which is easy, and if you've watched my tutorial on drawing or sketching those, they, you know, I use my guidelines, so I'm drawing my center point, I draw my guidelines coming out, and then I draw the petals around those. So that's kind of what I did here. I'm gonna go ahead and erase, sorry for the camera shake there, my little guidelines. Another little quick hint for you, when you are erasing and you get all these little eraser pieces on there, I never use my hand because it can smear the pencil and make it all dark and cloudy. So I use either my pencil eraser on my black wings, which I share with you a lot, or these are great. I got a whole box of these. They're called super erasers, Mitsubishi. And I've had these for years. Again, I can go back and find that link for you, but this whole thing is an eraser. And you just pull the little string and you get more out. But you guys, I have probably used this same one, I don't even know for how long. And so if I'm going to be doing some bigger erasing, I will use that as opposed to my little black one pencil that you know I love, because I can wear through these replaceable little erasers pretty quickly. So if I'm doing a larger project with more erasing, I will use this. These are cheaper. You get a whole box. I don't remember how much I paid, but they're made by Mitsubishi, and these are really great. So again, the way I created these flowers, let me show you real quick, was I just did my center, and these hellebores, they have quite a large center with, I found various colors, of course, depending on where you're at in the country, they probably look a little different, but I did notice they were 5 petal, which seemed to be across the board. That's how they are. And they almost reminded me of a anemone. I hope I'm saying that right. Anemone. They reminded me a little bit of that, except for the colors were completely different. And they had these, the hellebores have these little pieces coming out with I need to learn the name of these. If you guys know the name of these, just share it in the comments below. So I noticed they had quite a large center, and the center was yellow for predominantly most of the flowers. And then going back to drawing this, so I've got my center. I draw my 5 guidelines. And then I just go around and I draw my petals in there, which I'll do right now. What this helps me with is, number one, it's just a guideline to follow, but also it keeps my petals from getting too wonky, and they're all pointed back to the center of the flower. So it kind of keeps me from making my petals look really crazy. So go ahead and draw in, and they had quite large fat petals, which again reminds me a little bit of that anemone. And some of them were tucked behind. As you know, I don't like just a round tip like that. I like to kind of make mine a little bit more organic. I just think it looks more interesting and real. So it's something like that. Now, if you are, I don't want to get too deep into the sketching part and perceptions, because I will link, if you like, the tutorial I did on perceptions of flowers and how to do that. But in this drawing, I did add in another flower kind of from the side. So I drew my little center, and then I made this side shorter because you're looking at it from the side, just like that. And so these are going to be a little bit shorter and fatter. And then again, just drawing around using those guidelines. And you can get a more in-depth tutorial on this. And then I might even make this curling up, maybe part of the side. So again, that you can watch. It's a fun tutorial. Helped me a lot years ago because I get really wonky on perception. That's actually a leaf. Okay, so let's get into drawing these. I saw these in greens, in whites, and in my favorite color, that dark, deep magenta. So the color I'm going to use is the MeiLang, which is in the palette too. It's number 502, and it's rose red. Love this color. It just reminds me so much of the Winsor Newton pinks that I love. And one thing too, when you get a new set of tubes, the first time you open them, of course, you turn the lid over, and it has a little pointy piece here, and it will puncture the seal. You're going to get a gush a little bit, so just be ready for that. Let's see if I can open this. That's another thing with older tubes. This isn't older, these are quite new, but they can sometimes get kind of stuck. Okay, so and see, you also get in an older tube some of these little dry, cracked pieces of paint that can come out. Again, use your paintbrush to wipe anything off your painting so you don't get the oils of your hand on your painting. And then it's coming out a little, but I'm just gonna put a tiny bit on there. Straight out of the tubes, you guys, you don't need much. It's pretty concentrated, and the MeiLang is just so vibrant, you really don't need a lot. And then I think I'm going to use the violet red too, because I love their violet reds. The MeiLangs have such beautiful purples and pinks. I just love them. So you'll see right now, I hadn't even opened this one. I'm going to turn the cap over. I'm going to puncture this. Now watch when I take the lid off. It's going to kind of gush out. See, it's already coming out. So I want to get the lid back on there rather quickly. Let's see, there we go. So see, for me, a lot of you may enjoy doing this for every painting. I'd rather just grab my palette and go. But you may enjoy this process of kind of putting your colors into your palette. Excuse me. And then I'm going to use the, let's see, tree green. Put a little bit of that in there. My little palette, by the way, these are the palettes I use for my in-person workshops. I have them made by Miss Ceramics. You guys ask me about those a lot. Shouldn't always make these, but if you, so see, it's kind of squishing out there. I'm just gonna clean that off so it doesn't get, this is why, again, for me, I don't have patience for this in my tubes. So I like to have my colors all ready to go. Miss Ceramics, she doesn't make these all the time because they are a little bit labor intensive for her, but if you do reach out to her, and I'm not affiliated with her, she's just kind of become a friend. She's made so many palettes for me. Just tell her I sent you because she might be more inclined to create a palette for you. Otherwise, she only does them, I think, every few months. Okay, this one, ooh, let's see. Okay, don't tell my dentist, but I'm gonna use my teeth to open this. There we go. Okay, so this one is olive green, which is one of my favorite greens. I like to actually mix it with my lighter greens. Now, what I was talking about earlier is, for me, one of the cons of tube paints is I will tend to go into this and put a ton of pigment on my brush, and then I get too much. So I use a lot more paint, where when I'm using pigment from my palette, I can pick up a lot less. So again, there was some little flakes that came out. Just brush those off. And I think those, oh, we need a yellow for the center. Let's use Cad Yellow. Put a little bit of that here in my palette. There we go. Okay, so look at how bright and vibrant those are. Just real, I mean, the best word I could come up with is creamy or buttery. You guys, I honestly can't, it's almost too good to be true. I almost can't tell you enough about these MeiLangs. They're really fantastic. Okay, today I'm going to be using, I'm probably going to switch back and forth because I have a couple smaller areas. So I'll switch back and forth between my Princeton 6 long round, and this is the Velvetouch. As you know, I love the feel of their handles, and I'm just an aesthetic person. I just love the look at these. And I'll also use my 8 round Velvetouch. So the 6 is obviously a little bit smaller, and I can get just a tiny bit thinner lines. Easier. I can get thin lines with my 8 too, but I have to be a little bit more mindful of that. Please feel free to use whatever you have. Beginners, I'm always sharing these Dugatos. You get a whole set if you're not ready to invest in the Princetons, a whole entire set of these. And I noticed around the world it's different. In the US, you get a set of, I believe, 10, but in some other countries, you get a whole set of rounds, like 13 of them, I think. And they're maybe anywhere from $12 to $17, but you can really play with the different sizes. And I've had these for 10 months and the point's still good. So I love the Dugatos. Great beginner brush. I use those a lot. But today I am going to be using my 6 and my 8 round in Velvetouch. Let me just clean my workspace. Let me make sure I've got my palette in there so you can see. Yes. I love this palette. Again, she made these for my workshops because they're really small and I can hold them in my hand. And they're easy to use. Okay, so those are the MeiLang tubes. Great, great, great. I think these are, in the US, they're $35.99. So just a great deal, and you get 36 colors, all kinds of choices. If you're a lazy painter like me, I don't tend to mix my colors. This has all the colors you could need, which is great for a beginner because as a beginner, you're just trying to figure out brush strokes. You don't want to be fooling around with trying to mix paints too. Unless that's kind of your interest. Let me pull out my chair here. I'm gonna sit down. That's another question a lot of you have asked me. Do I sit or stand when I paint? I kind of do both. For the most part, I stand, but right now I'm sitting. Let's see, the last thing, because a lot of you will ask, that I'll just share with you is I'm using the 100% cotton Meeden paper. I really love this paper. I typically will share with you the Artisto pads, which I also love. I will paint in these forever. They're a spiral bound. You can label these flowers or by the month or the year or whatever you want, and just keep these as a handy reference. I've got piles and piles of these that I refer back to all the time for various things. But I do have a lot of you that prefer 100% cotton. I'm shocked by these because they have great texture, and I do use a lot of wet and wet, and they do just fine. But if you do want another student grade choice, this is kind of a step between, I guess it would be like a hybrid, I love that word, between the Artisto and the Arches, 100% cotton, and they're great. And the other thing I love about this is it's on a block. So when I'm done, which just means it's sealed on all edges, and when I'm done, you just slide a little knife or palette knife or whatever you have in between, even a credit card, and you loosen this up. But it's all held down really well, so you don't have to tape your paper or anything. Okay, so let's get going, guys. I think the first one I'm going to do, I've got my water, by the way, and my rinse water, really important. And I've also got my, let's see, got my towel here, but I also have a little paper towel for dabbing my brush off to make sure I don't have too much liquid in there. I think the way I'm going to approach these, I saw two different versions of this. I saw where it was darker in the center and lighter as it went out. And then I also saw where it was darker at the edges. So I'm going to play with being darker at the edges because I want the center yellow part to really show up. So here we go. I've got my paint here and put just a little bit of water on there. Look at that color. Isn't that beautiful? And I'm going in with probably 75% water. I mean, I just need to barely grab any of that. This is where beginners, be careful if you're using tubes, because in my workshops, I've seen the tendency to just swoosh your brush through that whole little pile. And let me tell you, you will get the most vibrant, globby, thick paint on your brush. So just that, you just need a tiny bit. Just pull a tiny bit out from there. And let's go in and put our first wash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer back to that push-pull technique that you know I love. Might need a little bit more. And I'm going to draw or paint a line. Then I'm going to rinse and wash and rinse my brush, dab it off so it's just damp. It's not wet. And now I'm going to use a really light touch and just start pulling this out. Now, let me know in the comments, because your hellebores might look different than what I'm looking at on Pinterest. I've never seen them in person, so I really can't say. And I know all over the world, they look a little bit different. I did those cyclamens the other day, and some of you were telling me that yours looked so different. And I just love that. Now, while it was wet and wet, I tapped in just a little bit more color here. And you can either tilt your page, you can blow on it. But because I used a really light touch at the tip of my brush, and I just pulled down that paint from the edges, look at how beautiful that is. I really like that look. So let's keep going around. And I'm again going to just pick up some of that paint. Be really careful how much you're picking up. And let's do the same thing over here. You want to get enough that when you go into it with your damp brush, that you can pull it out. And I'm just barely touching in to that edge. What's wonderful about this, I call this kind of feathering. It's similar to the push-pull, but for me, look at the white spaces it allows you pretty easily. Now I might go in with a tiny bit of that rose red and just tap in as well, just because I think it's pretty. I'm going to tilt my paper. You can also blow on it. And then let's keep going. So back into my paint. And using, so if you, I don't know if you can see this, but I just put the smallest little smidge of paint from my tube, and look at how much I have left there. I mean, I'm just barely touching into that. So tubes can be really efficient as far as that goes, if you're mindful of that. And then wash, rinse my brush, tap it off so that it's just damp. And then, oops, see, I tapped off too much. And start pulling down the color. There we go. And you can also, you know, play with the values. So this one is a little bit darker. I got a little bleed back there. That's okay. Play with the values, meaning how dark your paint is in each one. So it's interesting. So let's just keep going, and then we'll do this side flower. Let me go in. Now this one is kind of tucked behind the flower on the side. You do have to make sure you have enough pigment on here. So it needs to be kind of wet so that when you're pulling it, it does move. And then all of my brush strokes are going back towards the center of the flower. I just think that look is so pretty. Let's keep going. We got another one here. Wash, rinse my brush, tap it off, and pull just with light brush strokes. This is where your brush strokes really come in handy if you're practicing those. It's so funny because it sounds like such a boring practice, just lines and brush strokes and C strokes. But I hear from a lot of you how it has really changed your practice and made you so much better. So I love hearing that because I talk about that all the time. Developing that muscle memory can make such a difference. So this is my last one. I'm just using the tip of my brush to pull that color out. Okay, let's go in. Before this dries, I want to create this little leaf here. So I'm gonna go into my tree green, maybe a touch of the olive green, and create that leaf because I want it to bleed in a little bit. So I'm using the push, the compound stroke rather, point, flatten out my brush like this. There we go. And I'm getting a little bit of bleed from that flower petal. I love that look. Maybe touch in right here. Make it darker. I can even go in there and play and lift. There we go. Okay, so the side flower, which I showed you here, you're just going to draw a circle, and if it's on the side, you're gonna make it more egg-shaped, and then bring the center of your flower closer to the edge in front, because those petals you're looking at from the side, so they're gonna be a little bit shorter, which is what I did here. Let me redraw that for you so you can see it. Let me grab my pencil here. So there's my side. here is my circle. It's that egg shape. And then I've got my lines coming out. Hope you can see that. And I even put a lip on some of these petals. So let's draw our petals, following my guidelines, which I could not draw a good flower probably without those. And then I just added a lip. On these two, and it really gives that feeling of that flower is in front, and there you go. Okay, again, I'll share with you that link to my drawing perceptions, because that saved me years ago. I've always said I'm not really the best drawer. I've gotten better for sure over the years, but really it's not my thing. I used little tricks and guidelines to help me. Oh, you know what? I was going to make this one green. Let's see if I can soak that up, because I think the green and the purple is so pretty together. So sometimes paints lift well, sometimes they don't. This magenta, or what was this color? This was violet, is kind of saturating, so it doesn't work as well. But let's go into our, let me see, let me find it here. The yellow green. I'm going to put a little bit of that on my palette. I don't think I opened this one, so you'll see me bust through the cap again, and it'll probably come out. See, ooh, quick, quick, quick. Comes out rather fast. I always hate that. Okay, but that isn't just the MeiLang tubes. That's pretty much across the board with any tubes you use. Ooh, I love the MeiLang yellow green or tree green. I think it's so pretty. Okay, so I'm picking up a little more saturated. I'm going to apply that to my petal, wash and rinse, dab off a bit, not too much, because you do want to have a damp brush, and then I just start pulling. There we go. I just thought that was so interesting when there's green flowers, because I just always associated green with the petals. There we go. Wash, rinse my brush, tap it off, not too much. I know I repeat myself, but that's how I learn, is by repeating something. And that pulling those lines out, you can really, it gives you a great opportunity to leave the whites. Now what I might do, because I noticed in looking at my reference photo here, it's got some deeper green. So I might just go in and pick up a little bit of, let's see, what color was that? Well, the tree green, you could use a little bit of hooker's green. And I might just go in and add some of that in here while it's wet. Ooh, yeah, look at that, guys. Isn't that lovely? Oh, you guys, I love watercolors. Okay, it's why I've never really tried anything else. I think in college I might have tried acrylics, but I just loved watercolors. All right, so I've got more of that paint. Going to go over this, quickly wash, rinse my brush, tap it off. Pull that line down. Oh, so pretty. MeiLang, you guys, I love you guys. You are like my favorite. I never thought I'd switch from Winsor Newton, and I probably, I don't know, I might use my Winsor Newton for a professional commission or something, but I don't know, you guys. I think I would go with these MeiLangs. They're just so beautiful and fun to work with. Drawing, paint. Now pull it out. There we go. Loving how much white space I'm getting too. Go to the next one. There we go. Wash, rinse. Pull it down. And I am trying to add a little bit different colors into each of these, because I want, like here under that lip, I want it to be a little bit shadowed. So I just added some of that, let's see, what is that color? Tree green. And it created a little bit of darker color. And then go around here. Wash, rinse my brush. Pull it down. Look at how pretty contrasting colors can be. Aren't those gorgeous? Purples and greens are across on the color wheel, so it means they're contrasting or complementary, but they look so lovely together. And then let's do our leaf here. So we're going to do our stem. Could even do this stem. And then I'm going to mix a tiny bit of that lighter green in there. When I mix colors too, the other thing, a lot of times I don't fully mix them because I like them to kind of blend together. So here I'm doing point. As I pull, I'm adding more pressure. That way it widens out the belly of my brush. Point, push, and then lift again. And there you go. So pretty. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. I'm going to draw just to finish off the underneath part of that. Let me hold this up to the camera and see if you can see. So I've got a light colored lip on those petals, so they look like they're coming forward. Okay, let's do our last flower here, and I think I will do that in a pale green, and then we'll do this one in the purple, so we have that unity, that composition. So let's go in again. Do this a little bit quicker so we can get through this. Pulling down those colors. There we go. Add in some of the darker colors. But this repetition is what is going to build your motor skills. It's going and really stopping and thinking about, okay, what am I doing here? How am I creating this brush stroke? What does it take? Notice the amount of pressure that you have to put on your brush. And the angle, the thinner the line, the more upright you want to be. And another little tip, I always rest my palm, the side of my hand on my paper. I've seen people and had them in my classes and they can not kind of be hovering above their paper. I don't know how they do that, guys. Especially after I've had a coffee or two, that is not happening in my paint world. Okay, we're about done with this one. Then we will go in. Let me add a little bit of variation here. I'm going a little bit quicker here because we kind of went through this with the others. So let's just finish off this last petal. And look at that. I put the smallest amount of paint. And look at how much paint I've still got left from the tube. Now, you don't have to, once this dries, it's just like your pans if you want to reuse those. You don't have to waste them. You can go in and just spray them. And that would reactivate them again. But I think the key with most people when they're using tubes is they try to use what they put on their pan. Okay, there we go. Now, let's go back and see if we can add some of those little yellow dots in the center. I also noticed some of the centers were, so I'm going to pick up, and I'm picking up a pretty concentrated amount of that yellow because I want it to be pretty opaque. I have noticed some of the centers can also be greenish, and I'm going to just use the tip of my brush, and this is a cad yellow, so it's pretty bright. and just add in those dots. Let's do the same. I think this one is dry, and you'll know it's dry because it's not cool to the touch, and obviously it's not wet, so it's not coming off on your fingers. Such cute little flowers. You guys always ask me about the most interesting flowers. I love it. This one's still wet, so I don't necessarily want to go into the petals, but I am tapping in. So hopefully you can see those. Look how pretty they are. And then let's do our little bud over here. So I'll make that a mix of maybe some green and for the green stem, and maybe a little green leaf coming around the bud, holding it in. But I wanted to put purple here because right now I feel like my eye just kind of gets stuck right there in that purple. So I want to pull it down here a little bit. So I'm using the side of my brush there, if you noticed, leaving white space. I might even tap in with a little bit darker. But while it's wet, I'm going to pick up, I think I'll go for the tree green and go into that with the green while it's wet, because I actually want it to kind of spread together. Isn't that fun? So pretty. Again, that's why I love watercolors. And then let's create our fun little leaves here. So point, I just did a live on creating leaves. If you want to go watch that, point, press, and that compound stroke, that honestly, if you guys can get that compound stroke down, you can almost paint any flower. I'm just kind of going around and adding in here some different greens for interest. I think that's kind of fun. There we go. Let's keep going. We've got some more leaves here. Look how beautiful that is. Oh, you guys. I get so excited every day when I hear one of you say you watched one of my tutorials and you've come back to watercolor painting, because boy, I tried so many different mediums, and watercolors, you guys, is just my favorite. I just couldn't achieve some of these things. Maybe it was just my skill level, I don't know, but I couldn't achieve some of these things with any other medium. Now I could use a little bit more there, so let me just squeeze out a tiny bit more of my yellow green. Just a little bit. I found tube paints weren't as easy to travel with either. That's just me. And then point, press, widen out my brush, and then maybe go in with the darker green for the other side. Point, press, and ooh, you get that beautiful blend. Love it, love it, love it. That is one thing. I really love the MeiLang colors they give you. Point, press, point, press. Like the pre-made colors. Because again, you guys, I'm kind of a lazy painter. Point, press, point, press. Woo, look at that, how beautiful. So it almost looks like that's a little bit of shadowing. And I'm gonna make these, let me get some of my tree green, which is just a tad darker than the yellow green. Put that on there. Now I put a little bit too much on there because this is a new tube and it kind of gushed out a bit. And let's go in and create a little bit of variation there. Point, press, point, press. And then I'll go in and add some of the other colors. Point, press. Oh, so pretty. So, so pretty. Make sure too, just a tip while I'm painting here, to vary your sizes of your leaves. That's typically how I can tell a newer painter, because they will use all the same color leaf, all the same value, same size, same shape. So I've got little ones here, I've got darker ones there, I've got different values playing in my painting. So it just really makes for a more interesting painting. And I think I'm about done. I want to thank the viewer. You guys are so inspiring. You introduced me to the funnest florals and flowers that I've never even heard of. And then one more time, I just have to show you, look at these beautiful colors, blends. MeiLang, thank you, thank you. I am a total fan, and look at the wonderful colors. Now we could almost add, by the way, as far as for composition, I feel like we could almost add another bit of pink over here somewhere, maybe a little bud peeking out right here just to keep our eye moving around. Actually, let's do that. I don't want to leave you hanging there. So maybe a little bud coming out here. I just feel it's a better composition. I don't want to teach you, leave you with a painting that isn't quite finished. There you go. So see, just adding that, what it did is my eye kind of went here and stopped and almost fell off the page. But because I have more pink here, it keeps my eye moving. So it's got, oops, wrong color there. It has that interest, and it pulled my eye around. So my eye just keeps circulating around this painting. And I'll tell you this too, this is kind of that V composition, which I love. It kind of starts narrow here and it just explodes out, which I love that composition. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoy that. Please really take a look at playing with these. I think they're fantastic, and had so many of you ask me about how to refill your MeiLang palettes. One of you actually showed me these. I think they're newer. Bottom, love them. I just can't say enough about the MeiLang. And one last little note, I am adding, I only do 2 classes a month right now, second and fourth Tuesday. I am trying to add on each month. I have a couple seats left for the end of this month. My beginner's 2-hour course where we go through brush strokes and beginner supplies, all those wonderful foundations you need to paint something like this. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. I just love you guys. You bring me so much joy. You challenge me, and we just have so much fun here. And I hope you give this little painting a try. Thank you.